Marty Miller was depressed. It was the last day of school, and that meant his sophomore year of high school was over. For most students, summer meant a reprieve from the drudgery of classes, but for Marty it meant something different entirely: 10 weeks of playing full-time nursemaid and housekeeper for his mother Stephanie. 10 weeks without knowing when, or if, there would be any decent food in the house. 10 weeks to wonder when, not if, they would wind up homeless again, or when he would be dumped in a foster home when his mother went to jail again. Stephanie Miller was still asleep when Marty walked into their apartment shortly before 3:30 p.m. He could hear her snoring loudly, which meant she had probably gotten drunk after getting off work the night before. Marty sighed deeply. It wasn't right, it just wasn't right, that a 15-year-old should be forced to be parent to his 29-year-old mother. One thing you could say for Stephanie Miller was that she was fertile. Marty was the product of the day she lost her virginity. The only reason he arrived in the world was that the pregnant 14-year-old had gone in search of an abortion clinic and wound up instead at a faith-based pregnancy counseling center. She didn't make that mistake twice. Otherwise, Marty wouldn't have been an only child. Marty gathered up the clothes that his mother had shed on her way to the bedroom and put them in the laundry hamper. He collected the empty beer and wine bottles and headed for the recycling bin in the apartment building's courtyard. He tried to put the best face on things. His mother had made it through the entire work week without getting hammered. She had waited until Wednesday night, which marked the beginning of her weekend. Then he walked back into the apartment, and whatever good thoughts he had mustered faded as he looked around at the battered furniture and the threadbare, stained carpets. It wasn't much, but it was all Stephanie could afford on her $1,000 a month take-home pay from Circus Burger. She had managed to hold her job there for all of 6 weeks now. Maybe it was true, what Stephanie had told her son, that the manager had the hots for her. Despite her lifestyle, Stephanie had managed to hold on to her looks: a classic hourglass figure, a beautiful face, a healthy head of natural blonde hair. Yes, she was still beautiful as 30 approached. But what about another few years, she sometimes wondered. When would it all catch up with her? At the moment, however, Stephanie was waking up, and her thoughts were on one thing and one thing only: how long it was going to take her to empty the contents of her stomach. Marty heard the sound of his mother retching and cringed. He had just cleaned the bathroom last night. Now he would have to disinfect the toilet and floor all over again. The Pine Sol knockoff from the dollar store was so watered down he was afraid he wouldn't have enough to do the job. Just as he was contemplating whether or not to make a trip to the store, Stephanie emerged into the living room, clad in a tattered men's bathrobe, her hair a disheveled mess. There were traces of vomit on her chin. "Hello, Mother, you're looking as beautiful as always." "Fuck you too, son." She sat down at the battered formica table in their kitchen and lit a cigarette with a trembling hand. As she closed her eyes to take a deep drag, she heard her son's voice. "We can't afford car insurance." Stephanie had been ticketed for speeding and driving without insurance the week before, and had no idea where the money to pay the fines would come from. "But we can afford cigarettes?" "Don't you start with me, mister," she snapped. "Nobody put you in charge of me. I can take care of myself just fine." Marty laughed. "You're kidding, right?" He walked over to the coffee table, where one of his mother's newest purchases sat, a wooden Buddha statue. "Let's forget about your drinking, your drug use, your time in jail, and our episodes of homelessness. How about if we just focus on the useless junk you bring into the apartment that we can't afford?" Stephanie felt her anger rising. "God damn it, I am sick of being talked to by my own child in this way. I am the one who works for the paycheck, and I'm going to spend it as I goddamn well please. I saw that statue in a junk shop, and it made me smile, so I paid $10 for it. Besides, it's supposed to have magic in it, the power to grant 3 wishes, though one of the wishes is already used up." Marty shook his head. "What are you talking about, Mother? There is no such thing as magic. And even if there was, why would someone get rid of the statue when it still had 2 wishes left? The old man in the shop said the guy who owned it died. Died? That doesn't sound too lucky to me. Stephanie smiled. Supposedly he used it to wish for 100 gorgeous women to serve his every need. He had a heart attack after a week of non-stop sex. Not a bad way to go. Mother, this is insane. Oh, I don't believe the story for a second, but I wish it did work. If I did, I'd wish for you to spend some time in my shoes so you'd know how difficult my life is. Difficult? Difficult? You don't cook, except at work. You don't clean. You don't pay the bills. I do all of those things. Yeah, I wish I could be you for a while. That's the only way I could ever get your life straightened out. As he spoke those words, Marty felt disoriented and dizzy. He grabbed the kitchen counter and closed his eyes. At the same instant, Stephanie Miller was feeling the same sense of disorientation. This was more than just a hangover's kick. This reminded her a bit of an acid trip, but the last time she had used LSD she was still a teen. This seemed like a long time for a flashback, but she had heard about that happening sometimes. She just closed her eyes and decided to write it out. The trip was surprisingly short. Stephanie opened her eyes and realized she was looking at herself sitting at the table. God, she thought. I've never had an out-of-body experience before. This is kinda cool. Stephanie watched herself open her eyes and heard herself scream, yet she wasn't the one who was screaming. Mother! Stephanie cried. Do you realize what's happened? The wish came true. Stephanie held up her arms, which were now her son's arms, and felt her face. Oh my God! You're right. I can't believe it. It must have worked because we both wished the same wish. Well, I wish I was me again. Come on, Marty, wish us back. Marty stroked his newly soft chin. No, Mother. No, I'm not going to do that yet. What are you talking about? I said taking over your life for a while would be the only way I could really straighten it out. Now I've got that chance. You know, this is kind of like that Disney movie, Freaky Friday, the one with Jodie Foster. Lindsay Lohan. Actually, there were two versions, one with Foster, one with Lohan. Oh yes, the new Marty said with a sneer. My son the trivia expert. Well, go ahead and spend some time as me if you really want to. I'm sure you'll be happy to switch back as soon your first period kicks in. You've caused me enough psychological pain, I can live with some of your physical pain, Mother. The new Stephanie stood for several moments, thinking. She had 2 days until she was due back at work. There wasn't much she could accomplish so late in the day, so it would be important to be ready for an early start the next day. There was a lot to do. Marty, she finally said. I need you to give me a crash course in female things. Marty? You're Marty. As far as the world is concerned, you're Marty, and I'm your mother, and that's how we better address each other. Do you understand, young man? Yes, Mother. Stephanie smiled the sweetest smile she could manage. Thank you, son. Now let's get to work. And over the next 2 hours, the new Stephanie learned the technique for putting on a bra, how to apply makeup, the difference between skinny jeans, bootcut jeans and flared jeans, how to insert a tampon and lots more. When they were finished with the lesson, Stephanie told her son to get dinner started. Me? Why me? Because you're the one who always cooks, son. I want to take a nice, relaxing bubble bath while you get dinner ready. She smiled at her son and winked. When Thursday morning arrived, Stephanie was glad she had taken the relaxing bath and gone to bed early. Of course her son was still asleep, but those habits would soon change. She left him a note before heading out the door. Don't go looking for cigarettes, I have disposed of them all. We can't afford them, and they're bad for your health. I expect you to have cleaned the apartment and prepared dinner by the time I get back. Don't disappoint me. Love, Mom. Stephanie took a moment to give herself a last check-over before heading out the door. She had found difficulty in choosing an outfit for the day. Everything in what was now her closet seemed to be too revealing, too casual, too funky, too something. She had finally settled on a simple pink long-sleeved blouse, an above-the-knee black polyester skirt, black pantyhose, and black pumps. As she climbed behind the wheel of the '83 Camaro, she said a silent prayer of thanks that she had completed driver's ed during the school year just ended. She had thought it would be years before she could afford a car, but things had taken an unexpected turn. As she worked to get the Camaro to turn over, she once again sighed over her mother's choices. She had to have the Camaro because she wanted a car that made a statement and was fun to drive. Little things like cost of operation and reliability were less important. Finally, on the fourth try, the engine kicked over and Stephanie backed out of the parking space. She had a full day ahead of her, including stops at the food bank, the courthouse, the Goodwill store, and a couple of others. She had to get a food box for the month she was earning minimum wage at Circus Burger, which qualified them for help. The real Stephanie had been too proud, or too lazy, to take advantage of this help, but now she was willing to take anything she could get. She hoped the courts would allow some kind of payment schedule on the ticket. There was no way she could handle that hit to the household budget all at once. And Goodwill seemed the most reasonable choice to start building a better wardrobe. Even the prices in Walmart's clothing department seemed a little steep at the moment. Then it would be on to the dollar store for more cleaning supplies. What was that saying about a woman's work never being done? She opened the front door to the smells of food cooking. Her son greeted her cheerfully, and placed a plate in front of her as soon as she sat down. Hot dogs and macaroni and cheese. Not very ambitious, but at least he did what he had been asked. She glanced around the apartment. It looked like things had been straightened up, the counters and sink wiped, and their tired excuse for a vacuum cleaner ran over the even more tired carpet. "So what do you think?" Marty asked hopefully. Stephanie quickly concluded that her son was on his best behavior in hopes of winning a quick return to his own body. "Very good, son, thank you. The apartment looks great and this dinner is fine. If you want to get a little more ambitious next time, you might add a vegetable. I picked up some frozen veggies at the dollar store." Stephanie kicked off her pumps and began to massage her stockinged feet together. "I suppose I shouldn't be complaining about how my feet hurt or be asking how women put up with high heels." Marty couldn't help but laugh. "No, Mom, you're better off not going there. But let me ask you, what was your first day as a woman like?" Stephanie was glad she was chewing a bite of macaroni. It gave her a few moments to think. "Well, all the really interesting stuff seemed to happen at the courthouse. I walked into the building, knowing I needed to use the bathroom, and walked right into the men's room. I was so lucky no one was in there at that moment, and I popped right back out without being seen." She paused. "I'm afraid I'm not proud of my behavior in the court clerk's office." Marty asked, "What? Did you lose your temper? Wouldn't be the first time they've seen me do that." "No," Stephanie said, shaking her head. "It was when I went to the court clerk's office to see if I could arrange to pay off your latest tickets over time." She glared at Marty when she emphasized the word your, but he showed no reaction. The woman behind the counter said only the chief clerk could approve something like that. "He was busy, but she said he could see me in 10 minutes. I looked on the wall and saw a picture of the guy. He was almost totally bald and looked kind of mousy. So I excused myself to go to the restroom, the women's room, this time. I freshened my lipstick, fluffed my hair, and opened the top 2 buttons on my blouse. Then I went in there and pouted, flirted and begged. I leaned forward across his desk several times so he'd get a good look at these," said Stephanie, pointing toward her breasts. And he approved us paying $20 a month until it's settled." "So where did you get the idea to try that?" "Oh, watching you with the landlord last month when the rent was late, with the repo guy from the rent-to-own place a couple of months ago when you fell behind in the payments on my computer. Shall I go on?" Marty laughed. "Been there, done that 1,000 times. Welcome to my world." Then, after a pause, seriously, Moo Thursday dear, isn't it about time you ended this craziness and let us get back to our normal lives? Stephanie finished chewing a bite of hot dog and daintily patted her lips with a napkin. No, not yet. I want to go to your job for a while. Figure out what's going on there. You've been there for more than a month and haven't screwed things up yet. I'd like to keep the steady paychecks coming for a while. Stephanie shrugged. Whatever floats your boat, mother. But what am I going to do all day? Why don't you have video games or something, like a normal kid your age? Well, son, it's like this. A, we can't afford a game system, and B, I always thought I was being smart by doing more productive things like studying and taking care of the house and you. At 2:45 the following afternoon, Stephanie pulled into the parking lot of Circus Burger. The real Stephanie had been a notoriously unreliable employee, often showing up for work late if she showed up at all. Somehow, in the 6 weeks she had been working for Circus Burger, she had somehow managed to make it every single day, and had only been late once. The new Stephanie aimed to improve on that record. She got out of the Camaro and took a good look at the restaurant. The town of Hubbard had 4 fast food choices: a McDonald's, a Burger King, a Dairy Queen, and Circus Burger. Circus Burger had been around since before the national chains came in, but the place looked tired. The red, white and blue sign out front was more than 40 years old and was fading badly. It had been at least 20 years since there had been a coat of fresh paint on the outside and more than 10 since the interior of the place had seen a paint roller. The whole place had an air of decay. Stephanie walked through the employee entrance with a sense of weariness. She was greeted by a slightly built man in his mid-20s. He was almost rail-thin, but had a full head of curly black hair, shining eyes, and a charming smile. Stephanie was more than a little surprised to find herself sizing up a man in this way. She felt an odd tingle when Erwin, the manager, son of the owner, and grandson of the founder of Circus Burger, greeted her with a cheery "good afternoon." The next 8 hours went by in a blur. Whether out of loyalty or habit, Hubbard still supported Circus Burger, although Stephanie came to learn that business had fallen off the past couple of years. She spent all but her 15-minute break on her feet, taking and delivering orders, both at the counter and the drive-through window. Marty was still up when Stephanie arrived home a little after 11. "Hi, Mother. How was your first day?" "Well, my feet hurt, but we agreed not to go there." "I don't know. Fine, I guess. I realized I must be the oldest person working there. It seems like all the other employees are teenagers, except for Erwin, and I bet he isn't a day over 25. Actually, he's 26. Is it true he still lives with his parents? He moved back in with them after his wife left him, and left their 2 kids behind. Grandma takes care of the little ones while Erwin runs the drive-in. I don't know why you said he's a nerd. I thought he was very nice." "Are you blushing, Mother?" "Oh my God, you are. You think he's cute or something?" Stephanie glared at Marty. "I do not have the hots for you for my boss, or for any guy. Get that through your head right now." Marty gave an exaggerated salute and said, "Yes, ma'am." The next few days passed uneventfully. Marty kept hoping Stephanie would see that he was doing everything he could to keep the house orderly. Heck, he had even gone out looking for a summer job. But Stephanie seemed to be totally consumed by her job. The following Wednesday night, she returned to the apartment with big news. "Marty wants me to be the assistant manager. Isn't that great? What are you supposed to do as assistant manager? Help with scheduling, inventory, things like that, and he wants me to work on promotional ideas. I already came up with one. He's agreed to add sliders to the menu. And the best part is, my pay goes up from minimum wage to $10 an hour." Marty nodded. "That will help us out. But look, don't get too comfortable in my body, okay? Your period is going to start in another day or 2 and then you might not think it's so much fun to be a woman." Marty was right on all counts. At first, Stephanie couldn't understand why her jeans no longer fit, why her head ached, her back hurt, and she felt miserable. Then the reality dawned. A couple of nights later, Marty was in his bedroom when he heard Stephanie walk in. The next sound was the opening and closing cupboard doors. Marty poked his head into the kitchen. "What are you looking for?" "An ashtray." "What?" "I was having a really crappy day. Erwin yelled at me because I forgot to put the meat out to thaw in time for the dinner rush. This woman screamed at me because I put pickles on her kids' burgers and she had told me no pickles. I was out back shaking like a leaf and crying. I suppose it doesn't help that I started my period today, and Gina said why didn't I have a smoke to help calm myself down. Before I knew it, I was taking one from her. It's called bumming. Whatever, son. And one thing led to another and I stopped for a pack on the way home, and here I am, smoking. Are you happy?" She took a deep drag. "If you're gonna smoke, you want to buy them by the carton, not by the pack," Marty said helpfully. "I know how concerned you are about the budget, and they're cheaper that way." Another glare from Stephanie told Marty to change the subject. "So how are the new sliders going over?" "They're not. But I've got an idea for tomorrow." She pointed to her breasts. "Since I've got these things, I might as well put them to good use. And besides, they're bigger than ever right now, thanks to my Aunt Flo." "Aunt Flo?" Erwin asked. "Where did you pick that one up?" "Oh," Stephanie shrugged. "Just hanging with the girls." The next afternoon, Stephanie arrived at work wearing bicycle shorts and a bikini top. She quickly hand-lettered a sign, "Try our new sliders," and dragged Erwin to the curb with her. Erwin held the sign, while Stephanie displayed a tray of the mini burgers. It was Circus Burger's best day of business in 5 years. Stephanie waited a few days before springing her next idea on Erwin. She ditched her usual polo shirt for a halter that day and made sure her hair and makeup were perfect. She was confident in her idea, but if a little flirting would help sell it, then why not? Marty watched his mother fussing over herself before leaving for work and began to wonder if he'd ever get a chance to resume his old life. At 7 that evening, Stephanie asked Erwin to join her as she took her smoke break out back. He didn't care for the habit, but knew this was what he had to deal with from most of his staff. She was direct. "Erwin, it's time to do something big if you want to save this place. I think it's time to bury Circus Burger and introduce Bikini Burger in its place. Every server wears a bikini top. It doesn't cost a thing, it gets the town talking, and most importantly, it gets them in the drive-thru or through the door." Erwin was agitated when he replied, "But my grandfather started Circus Burger 60 years ago. And my father ran it until he retired. I'm supposed to pass it on to little Cody when he grows up." Stephanie had just put out her cigarette and put a hand on Erwin's shoulder. She spoke softly and looked him squarely in the eye. "If your grandfather was here today, Erwin, what would he say mattered most, the name or the business itself? Life is about change. The businesses that surprise don't stand still. They change to meet changing times. Think about it." Erwin agreed to think about it. And 2 days later, after taking about it with his parents, agreed to it. Marty kept asking Stephanie when they were going to switch back, and Stephanie kept brushing the question aside. "We've got so much to do to get the place in order," she said. Erwin or his parents agreed to a face life inside and out, and we're revamping the menu. I finally talked him into going for fresh, local ingredients. We're never going to compete on price, so we have to go for quality and atmosphere. And sex. Stephanie gave her breasts a slap. "Yes," she agreed. "And sex." By late August, work on the transition to Bikini Burger was far along, but still wasn't finished. Stephanie got up earlier than usual one morning and woke up Marty. "Time to get you registered for school, mister." "What are you talking about?" "It's the law. School is about to start. You have to go to school." "Oh. My. God. You always told me how bad you felt about having to drop out after your freshman year when you got pregnant with me. Now's your chance to continue your education. Might as well take advantage of it. Marty wondered if his nightmare would ever end. That evening, when Stephanie returned from work, his worst fears were realized. His mother walked through the door carrying a small bag from Rite Aid. She sat down at the table and took out a home pregnancy test. "Marty," she said matter-of-factly, "I'm sure you've used these before. Can you help me out?" "Sure, hey. Why do you need a pregnancy test?" 'Cause I'm late, really late." "Who?" "Oh God, don't tell me it's Erwin." "Yes, it's Erwin. And I really don't want to discuss this right now." Several minutes later, the unmistakable blue line delivered its message: Stephanie was pregnant. "I can't believe this," Marty cried. You can't have his baby, for God's sake." "Oh yes I can. He's asked me to marry him, and I've accepted. He's the best friend I've ever had, so kind, gentle and funny, and he's a pretty good lover, too." "Where have you two? I mean, you haven't brought him here." "Where? Mommy and Daddy's house?" "No," Stephanie said with a smile. "You know that old motel across from the restaurant? Did you know they offer rates by the hour?" "What are you saying?" "We're going to switch back. We've got to switch back." Marty looked frantically around the living room. "Hey, where's the statue?" "I got rid of it." "I'm sorry, Marty, but I've decided I like my life too much the way it is. Look, if I can get used to my new life, you can get used to yours. Look, it's going to be wonderful. Erwin's agreed to get us a house of our own, a real house. We're never going to be homeless again. You're going to finish high school, we'll get you tutors or whatever help you need. You'll have a little sister, a little brother," and she pointed to her belly, "who knows what else? It's going to be quite an adventure for all of us." "I can hardly wait," said a dejected Marty. "Oh, come and give your mother a hug," Stephanie said with outstretched arms. When Marty hesitated, she made it clear by her expression that it was an order, not a request. As Marty felt himself being pressed against breasts that were once his, he asked himself one more time if this wasn't some strange dream that just didn't want to end. Stephanie felt Marty's anguish, but she couldn't bring herself to tell him that she hadn't actually destroyed the statue. Instead, it was carefully hidden at Bikini Burger. If she ever got tired of life as a wife and mother, she still might decide to switch back if that was even possible. She thought, maybe the statue's wishes were all used up, or maybe the switch wasn't connected to the statue at all. These were questions that would probably never be answered. All Stephanie knew with certainty was that at this moment she felt more happiness and fulfillment than she had ever known. And that was enough, more than enough.